Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 73 based on novel. So let's start. The words fell, Mu-Han waved his big hand, and the turbulent fighting spirit quickly condensed in the palm, emitting a terrible momentum. Then, Mu-Han suddenly moved and rushed towards Xiao Yang. Damn it! Stop him! Seeing Mu-Han rushing towards Xiao Yang, Jiu Li's two faces suddenly changed and shouted angrily. They wanted to drag their injured body to intercept Mu-Han. But Mu-Han smiled coldly when he saw this, turned his palm, and an array plate burst out in an instant, quickly condensing two mysterious arrays of golden light in the void. Trapped God Array. Jiu Li and his wife were shocked when they saw this array. Their pale faces suddenly became frozen, but before they dodged, the shining golden light enveloped them. This trapped God Array has the same function as the large array that is enveloping the whole space at the moment. Although there is only one array disk, its function is better than this large array. Jiu Li can still remember clearly that the original Mu-Han used this array to trap a strong half-emperor who had set foot in the 9 stars into the array for a year. From beginning to end, the big array has never been broken by the 9 stars and half-emperor. Although there is no lack of Mu-Han's reinforcement factor, even so, it is enough to see the terror of the trapped God Array. However, fortunately, although the trapped God Array is powerful, even the 9-star and half-emperor will inevitably suffer losses, but the scope it covers is surprisingly small, only 100 feet away. Moreover, the most fatal disadvantage of the trapped God Array is that it can only be used once every 3 months. Once it is forcibly used, it will only end up with damage to the array disk. They trapped Jiu Li and Mu-Han. Mu-Han looked cold again and moved. In a twinkling, he had come behind Xiao Yang. At this time, Xiao Yang seemed to be ignorant and hit the barrier in front of him with his fists. However, looking at the force, it was much weaker than just now. In the twinkling of an eye, Xiao Yang's strength seemed to have shrunk rapidly and looked very strange. But now Mu-Han saw that Xiao Yang was close at hand, so he didn't explore carefully. His body shape appeared not far behind Xiao Yang in a few flashes. At the next moment, a ghost-like figure appeared behind him. The shadow reflected by Mu-Han Jianshuo's body covered Xiao Yang's seemingly thin body. Mu-Han's generous palm was raised quickly, and the terrible pressure in the palm spread wantonly. Until this time, Xiao Yang seemed to have just reacted. A look of horror appeared on his pale face, but in that feint, it revealed a mystery. Ha ha! Yang Xiao is dead. Today, I will avenge Mo Hui with blood. Use your blood to comfort Mo Hui's spirit in heaven. Although Xiao Yang woke up at the critical moment, Mu-Han didn't leave him extra time. Seeing the frightened look on the latter's face, Mu-Han felt extremely excited in his heart and couldn't help laughing ferociously. When Xiao Yang returned to his mind and reacted, Mu-Han's powerful palm had been firmly pressed on Xiao Yang's back. At that time, the turbulent fighting spirit poured out madly with an overwhelming momentum, and all his brains poured into Xiao Yang's body. Without Mu-Han's control, the fierce fighting spirit became more ferocious at this time. It was like turning into a ferocious warcraft, raging in Xiao Yang's body. Mu-Han looked at Xiao Yang with a grim smile. His eyes were full of madness. But when Xiao Yang's body expanded to an extremely terrible level, Mu-Han at this time finally found something wrong. With Xiao Yang's body burst and cracked, but under the skin, there was not a trace of blood flowing out, but an ethereal and strange fog. The fog is the product of the substantiation of soul power. This soul separation. Mu-Han's frightened voice shouted, and the scream sounded like thunder through this empty minefield. With the voice falling in Mu-Han's mouth, Xiao Yang, whose body has expanded to the limit, is facing him. The torn corners of his mouth show a more terrible smile, and then, boom! The terrible explosion resounded through the sky, which was equivalent to the blow of a 1.5-star emperor's full self-explosion. It can be regarded as an extremely terrible force in the void minefield at the moment. Dang! 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 At the moment of Xiao Yang's self-explosion, the destructive power of terror severely bombarded the barrier behind him. The defense on the barrier also weakened rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, the whole battle circle was violently shaken up. Circles of invisible space waves spread in this space, and the power of terror was shocking. When that power swept through, even some 7.5 emperors who entered the thunder pool were not dignified. Although the power generated by this self-explosion is not enough to kill them, it is also enough to make them treat them positively. At least, it is completely impossible to ignore it. When those 8.5 emperors saw Xiao Yang who exploded in the field, they were shocked by the power generated by this self-explosion, but they couldn't help feeling a great pity. Xiao Yang, a proud man, would never be less successful than Mu Han if he grew up. It's just a pity. God is jealous of talents. Rock Owl. Near the periphery of the space, not far behind Zhongli, is the edge of the whole battle circle. Xiao Yang reminded him to step back. He saw Xiao Yang's positive look. He also thought Xiao Yang would have his own assurance, but he didn't expect that the end would be like this. Alas! Why is this boy so reckless? Mu Han is a 9.5-star emperor. Even if you explode, do you really think you can kill him? It's a pity to have such a good cultivation talent. Zhongli frowns and looks at the center of the explosion. He can't help feeling a pity for Xiao Yang. He sighs and shakes his head. Now Xiao Yang has exploded and can't live. Zhongli has no intention to wade in the muddy water again. He turns around and wants to turn around and leave. Previously, he helped Xiao Yang because he liked Xiao Yang's future potential, but since this is the result now, he will not stay to beg for trouble. Although Xiao Yang blew himself up around Mu Han, the strength gap between the two is there after all. With Mu Han's means, he can resist it completely. Compared with these outsiders, Jiu Li and Red Phosphorus showed a slightly relaxed look on their faces. They naturally know that the self-exploding Xiao Yang in front of them is not the real Xiao Yang, but his incarnation. This is what they both know after the auction. At that time, after learning that Xiao Yang had a half-emperor level separation, they also sighed for a while. They had worked hard for most of their lives to reach the half-emperor level, but in the end, they couldn't compare with another person's separation. However, from the current situation, Xiao Yang's separation is indeed good. Although his strength is no better than his own body, his role is not bad at all. At least at this critical moment, it can have unexpected effects. Drink. A fierce drink like thunder came out. In the fighting storm, a bright golden fighting light column suddenly shot upward and disappeared into the endless darkness. At the same time, the fog condensed after the storm under this fierce drink seemed to be pulled by some kind of traction, circling the light column, quickly flew up, turned into fog snakes and disappeared into the void. Drink. Boy, there are a lot of small hands. However, with this, I also want to hurt me. I really overestimate my strength. Hehe, if you think my separation is used to deal with you, you think more. With the sound of laughing words falling, at the place of explosion, before the barrier, an arm full of purple and gold dragon scales was drawn out of the void and punched hard on the vulnerable barrier. Click. A crisp crack sounded. Mu Han turned around fiercely, but he was seeing Xiao Yang standing in front of the broken barrier. He was looking at him with a pale smile, and then took a big step out of the formation. That's Rock Owl. On the void in the distance, Zhongli stared at Xiao Yang who strode out of the barrier with a shocked face. A pair of turbid old eyes showed a thick look of surprise. It's really a Rock Owl. Didn't he explode just now? But why? Hiss. Mu Han said just now. It's separation. It's separation of soul. After some thinking, Zhongli soon understood that it was no wonder that Xiao Yang in front of him could continue to survive after the self-explosion. It turned out that the self-explosion was not the noumenon at all, but the separation of his soul. However, because of this, in the hearts of all the people present, there was a trace of interest in Xiao Yang's soul separation, which can condense the separation with semi-imperial strength, which is more real than a puppet. Of course, these people are not stupid enough to rob Xiao Yang of that skill. After previous speculation, they are more and more curious about Xiao Yang's identity. None of them will act rashly until they know the specific truth. After all, if Xiao Yang really came out of a big force, once he had an accident, the forces behind him would certainly know who the murderer was. At that time, even if you get the skill and succeed in cultivation, you will have to pay the price of your life. Although the baby is good, it also needs to have a life to enjoy. For them, the most precious thing is not their own life. Good boy. I know I won't look wrong. How can such a high cultivation talent and behave like a man be so stupid? Ha ha. After figuring out the cause of Xiao Yang's self-explosion, even if Zhong Lidang burst into laughter, the former turned his eyes to Zhong Lidang and said with a slightly apologetic smile. Sorry, brother Zhong Li, I didn't tell you in advance. Haha, it's okay. As long as you're okay, haha. To tell you the truth, I seldom see Master Mu make a fool of himself, haha. Zhong Li's voice fell, and the people in the field shot their eyes at Mu Han. When Mu Han heard these, his face, which was extremely cold, became gloomy at the moment. At the moment, Mu Han's momentum is still strong and incomparable. There is no scar on his whole body. The self-explosion of Xiao Yang's incarnation has not caused any substantive damage to Mu Han, which can also be said to be of no effect. But to everyone's surprise, Mu Han looked very embarrassed at the moment. His clothes and robes were smashed in the explosion just now. On his chest, there was a very conspicuous red mark the size of a palm. It seemed that he was not undamaged in the explosion just now. Hiss. Seeing this scene, those peripheral semi-imperial strongmen also couldn't help staring at Mu Han with shocked eyes at the moment, with their mouth open, and took a breath. It is hard to imagine that Mu Han, even the 9-star and half emperor, was injured in the hands of a 3-star and half emperor today. Although this injury can be ignored, it is equivalent to an insult to Mu Han. Rock Owl. Good. Good. You're really good. I wanted to play with you, but what I never thought was that you had to die wholeheartedly. In that case, no wonder I am. Mu Han shouted and scolded in an extremely gloomy voice on his old face. His vicious words were full of endless killing intention. A pair of turbid old eyes burst out a golden flame of rage. Xiao Yang in front of him made him really angry. However, in the face of Mu Han's cold words, Xiao Yang's pale cheeks did not show too many expressions. His eyes were somewhat lax and dark. His eyes slowly raised and looked at Mu Han. Xiao Yang took a deep breath and slowly spit out 2 words in his mouth. Noisy. The plain 2 words, however, made those semi-imperialist strong men present have a pair of turbid old eyes. They looked suddenly frozen and their mouth opened slightly. For a time, they were shocked by Xiao Yang's sentence. Xiao Yang's words can really be regarded as extremely overbearing. He dares to use the word noisy to express his admiration for the cold. Xiao Yang is afraid to be the first person in this wild ancient city. Of course, Mu Han can be hurt by the strength of the 3-star semi-emperor. Although it is only a skin injury, Xiao Yang is also the first person in the history of this wild ancient city. Similarly, even for the whole southern region and even the whole continent, those who can hurt a 9-star and half emperor at the level of 3-star and half emperor dare not say no, but they must be a rare existence. This kind of person is usually regarded by some real big forces, and will be recruited into the sect force early and become the potential stock of this force. At this moment, people can't help but doubt Xiao Yang's true identity again. All kinds of guesses are constantly emerging in their hearts. The puppet with strength at the semi-imperial level, various high-level fighting skills, strange skill separation, and arrogant and uninhibited heart, all of which are invisible, revealing Xiao Yang's mysterious background to the public. At this time, even Mu Han's heart sank slightly. The original calm heart fluctuated a little at the moment. If Xiao Yang is really a descendant of any great power, even if he is a 9-star and half emperor, he will be killed. In this world, the semi-imperial strong can indeed be called the strong, but at the same time, they are also the real weak, or mole ants. In front of the real strong, the half emperor is just a stage in the whole road of cultivation. Although the half emperor is strong, there are not a few people who can dominate the half emperor. Never forget that cultivation is endless. However, the current situation has been settled, and the arrow is already on the string and has to be sent. Even if he wants to stop at the moment, I'm afraid it's too late. Moreover, the purpose of his Mu Han's entering the Thunder Pool this time is not just for Xiao Yang. What's more, Xiao Yang killed his apprentice with a debt of blood in front of him, and the debt of blood is paid for by blood. That's the way of heaven. Invisibly, between Mu Han and Xiao Yang, they have reached the point of life and death. Boy, I don't care what your origin is, you kill my disciple. This blood debt must be paid by your blood. After a long time, Mu Han's old face showed a ferocious look again, his eyes gradually became fierce, and he drank bloodthirsty at the bottom of his heart. Mu Han raised his eyes and shot at Xiao Yang like a sharp arrow. The invisible fierce and domineering power made the void between them slightly distorted. Xiao Yang frowned when he saw this. The soul power in the center of his eyebrows poured out quickly and condensed an invisible shield the size of a washbasin in front of him. However, the shield was much weaker than what it usually condensed. While the avatar explodes, the consumption of soul power is also very large. It's just at ordinary times, but it has a certain burden for Xiao Yang at the moment. The eyes like sharp arrows passed through the soul shield, but the invisible power was resisted. Mu Han saw the opportunity. When the soul shield dispersed, his body suddenly flashed and disappeared in place. At the same time, in the space in front of Xiao Yang, Mu Han's figure suddenly appeared like a ghost, and he slapped Xiao Yang's chest. But at the moment when Mu Han's palm was printed on Xiao Yang's chest, Xiao Yang in front of Mu Han was torn to pieces by the following palm wind. This boy, it's so fast. I'm afraid even an ordinary 8-star-and-a-half emperor can't do it. Mu Han felt a little chilly in his heart. It was only Xiao Yang when he was 3-star-and-a-half emperor. I was afraid that even he could do nothing under this terrible speed if his strength went further. This son will die during the trip to Lei Kai, otherwise, there will be endless trouble in the future. In the face of Xiao Yang, whose strength is only in the 3-star-half emperor, Mu Han at the moment finally has a deep respect for Xiao Yangxing in his heart. Drink. The withered claws like eagle claws tore the void and tore the virtual shadow in front of him. Mu Han's face became more and more gloomy. It was originally thought that Mu Han's strength, even if Xiao Yang was fast, would never be his opponent. But now the situation is different. Xiao Yang has another hour to leave. Xiao Yang has him nearby. Even Mu Han dare not ignore it. Therefore, under the control of Zhongli, Mu Han has nothing to do with Xiao Yang for a time. The figure had just stopped. Behind Mu Han, a cold breaking wind suddenly sounded, and a powerful palm blasted hard at Mu Han's back. Zhongli, do you really think you have the ability to fight with me when your strength reaches the peak of 8-star-and-a-half emperor? Today, I'll show you what 9-star-and-a-half emperor is. Feeling the fierce wind behind him, Mu Han looked even colder. As soon as his arm shook, the fighting spirit in the palm under his sleeve robe was thin. He condensed rapidly in Mu Han's palm. When Zhongli bullied him behind him, he turned fiercely and blasted with the latter's palm. Boom! For a moment, a terrible energy storm swept away, and the invisible void collapsed inch by inch centered on the junction of their palms. When the storm dispersed, a figure was blown out of the center of the explosion. Looking at its appearance, it was Zhongli. Zhongli flew back 100 feet. The muscles on his old face twitched slightly because of the injury in his body, and a trace of blood could not help flowing from the corners of his mouth. Cough. Although I'm not as strong as you, fortunately, I'm not as strong as you. I haven't made any progress in my strength for hundreds of years. Compared with you, my cultivation is much more meaningful. If you want to die, I'll kill you first. As soon as Zhongli's voice fell, a fierce cry full of rage suddenly came out. Mu Leng snorted. In a flash, it had appeared on the right side of Zhongli's body. His right leg was raised. A powerful whip leg was pounded on Mu Han's back. Bang! Zhongli's figure flew forward uncontrollably. At the same time, he couldn't help spitting out a mouthful of anti-blood, but on his face, not only did he show the color of fear, but the corners of his mouth aroused a sneer. Mu Han's body flashed again, came to Zhongli, bent his fingers into claws, grabbed the latter's vest, and looked like he wanted to pull Zhongli's spine out. Zhongli's face changed slightly when he saw this. Unexpectedly, Mu Han's hand was so vicious. He just wanted to move, but Mu Han's speed was better. In an instant, a claw like an eagle's claw had come behind Zhongli and grabbed Zhongli's spine. If this claw was caught, Zhongli would not die, and I'm afraid he would have to become a useless person in the future. Feel the sharp breath on it. Zhongli feels dignified in his heart. He can only hope that he can appear quickly at the moment of persistence. Otherwise, his old life will be really dangerous. Die. A fierce drink came out of his mouth. Mu Han was cruel, and a ferocious smile like a beast was caught at the corners of his mouth. Bang! However, at the moment when Mu Han grabbed the bell vest, a dull sound of physical collision sounded like a balloon burst, suddenly between the two. Zhongli's figure still flew forward, and behind him, Mu Han at the moment looked at Xiao Yang in front of him with an unbelievable face, showing a surprised look. At this moment, in front of Mu Han's body, the claw that had been grabbed by Zhongli was held in the palm by Xiao Yan. The huge dragon claw made Mu Han stunned. However, when he reacted, Xiao Yang suddenly lifted his right leg. A powerful and terrible whip leg had been pounded on Mu Han's chest. Bang! Mu Han's figure was like a football, drawing an arc on the void, but then he stabilized his figure. When he looked up, the dark and deep pupils suddenly became cold and chilling. 8-pole collapse. With a fierce drink, Xiao Yang is a whip leg and fiercely blows at Mu Han in front of him. However, when Xiao Yang's lower leg is close to Mu Han's head, Mu Han's claws like eagle claws are fiercely raised and firmly lock Xiao Yang's ankle. No matter how hard Xiao Yang's 8-pole collapses, he can't break away from Mu Han's palm. What? Seeing that Mu Han broke his octuple by force, Xiao Yang was shocked and couldn't help crying out. Mu Han grinned and showed a row of white teeth in a cold tone. Boy, with your strength, you also want to hurt me. It's like eating people and talking about dreams. After that, Mu Han locked Xiao Yang's claws more forcefully. His thin fingertips were forcibly buckled into the flesh at Xiao Yang's ankles, and the bright red blood flowed out quickly. Xiao Yang's face was dignified. He forced his body to turn around in the air and kicked Mu Han again. He wanted to open the distance between them. Hum. In this regard, Mu Han once again gave a cold hum, grabbed Xiao Yang's claws on his ankle and twisted them fiercely upward. Xiao Yang's body flew up uncontrollably, and his seemingly thin body was turned over. Without the slightest emotion, Mu Han immediately blew out a fist. With a small array the size of a palm, Mu Han successfully condensed on his fist. Mu Han's fist was even more terrifying. Bang! With a dull bang, Xiao Yang's face turned red in an instant. He took a big mouth, and a blood arrow spewed out of his mouth and shot at Mu Han's face door. Mu Han's old eyes narrowed and his anger soared. The golden light burst from a pair of turbid old eyes, quickly condensed an array shield in front of him, and broke the oncoming blood arrow at will. Immediately after that, Mu Han quickly made a seal in his hands, and the surging soul power in the center of his eyebrows poured out. With the change of the seal formula, 100 jong tall mysterious gold seal was condensed in front of Mu Han. No! Rock Owl, get back! Seeing the golden seal, Zhong Li and Jiyu Li almost shouted at Xiao Yang's startled voice at the same time. However, Mu Han, the owner of the golden seal, couldn't help but give a sarcastic smile. At such a close distance, with Xiao Yang's state at this time, it is impossible to hide. Don't say that he is only a 3-star and half emperor. Even 8 stars can't hide. Zhen Hunian. Go. With a low drink containing a little sneer, the huge golden seal in front of Mu Han suddenly burst out a dazzling golden light. With the sound of drinking in Mu Han's mouth, the huge golden seal light suddenly shocked, with a sharp wind sound, rushed towards Xiao Yang. Although the gold seal is hundreds of feet tall, its moving speed is not slow at all. In addition, the distance between the gold seal and Xiao Yang is only tens of feet. Therefore, in a twinkling of an eye, the gold seal has come to Xiao Yang. The terrible hurricane swept the void, and the cold pressure was almost breathless. Xiao Yang's body felt numb under the strong wind, and the skin and muscles on his face were distorted at the moment. However, in the face of the closer and closer golden seal in front of Xiao Yang's dark eyes, it seems that there is no wave in the ancient well. The soul power in the middle of the eyebrows condenses rapidly on the body surface, and the fighting spirit in the body gushes out madly without money. At this time, under Xiao Yang's sleeve robe, a beautiful fire wheel is rotating at a high speed. Slightly laborious, Xiao Yang stared at the soul seal of the town in front of him. The dark pupils reflected the bright golden hair. In the thunder pool, the golden barrier slowly dissipated, and all 300 array plates were invalid. Somewhere in the void, Jiyu Lichihu and Zhong Hao were trapped in the divine array. The battle between the North King and Zhong Hao was coming to an end. Mo Zhai and Yang Bing stood outside the battle circle and looked at the battle situation in the field. Yang Bing's eyes were sharp, while Mo Zhai had a shadow on his face and a cruel and greedy smile on his mouth. In the void at the moment, the powerful soul seal of Lingtian town is emitting dazzling golden light, and the terrible pressure comes from it. Although it is far away, it still dignifies the semi-imperial strong men outside the war circle. Mu Han can be called one of the wild double tyrants, so he naturally has a certain strength. If the cultivation of the 9-star and half emperor can make him become one of the 2 supreme powers in the wild ancient city, then the array and fighting skills are the reliance on which he can sit firmly. Zhen Hunian is a human-level intermediate soul skill. Although it is not a real fighting skill, it is undoubtedly much stronger than Xiao Yang's Huangquan Tianyu. Like all soul skills, Zhenhuan Seal takes soul power as the basis of soul technology, and condenses the soul seal with terrorist damage with powerful soul power. Zhenhuan Seal directly attacks people's soul and hurts the origin. The light ones suffer from the origin, the strength is damaged, and the heavy ones will die if their souls are broken. Compared with Fighting Spirit, Soul Seal is more direct and domineering, but in comparison, Soul Seal is slightly inferior to Fighting Spirit in terms of power. As the real theme of this continent, people's manipulation of Fighting Spirit is far more than the soul power. After all, not everyone, like the master of the herbalist array, is born with the terrible soul power far beyond ordinary people. Naturally, few people will think about cultivating the soul power. But in the field at the moment, Jiyu Li and Zhong Li, who are trapped in the god array, are all looking at Xiao Yang with heavy faces. The huge Zhenhuan Seal, like a giant god, rushed towards Xiao Yang, tearing the void with overbearing momentum. In this space, no one thought it could resist Mu Han's attack. As a human-level soul skill, this town soul seal is also one of Mu Han's famous fighting skills. After turning over Mu Han's countless achievements in the past, almost every time, the town soul seal will play a great role in Muhan's war situation. Even, this town soul seal has saved Muhan's sexual life several times. Now Muhan has stepped into the 9-star and half-emperor. He can be called a real strong man. He once again displays the town soul seal. How can ordinary half-emperor strong men resist such power? Outside the court, those semi-imperial strong men stared at the town soul seal with dignified eyes. Many people were secretly measuring. If they were to face Muhan's town soul seal, even at the peak, how much could they be sure? In this way, not to mention Xiao Yang facing the soul seal of the town. Alas! It's a pity that such a talented person would not end up like this if he didn't act too arrogant. You'd better discipline your younger generation when you go back. Don't follow in the footsteps. Among the strong semi-emperors outside the court, there were bursts of sighs with pity. They all felt that Xiao Yang was acting too perversely, so they would provoke right and wrong everywhere. However, they didn't consider how so many things would happen between Xiao Yang and Mo Zhai if he wasn't grumpy. Finally, they surprised the guys at the level of 9-star semi-emperor. In all these events, Xiao Yang is arrogant and overbearing, but he has his own capital, but Mo Zhai is the strategist of the whole event. In the trapped god array, the red phosphorus hit the barrier in front of him with a fierce fist. The barrier remained motionless, but the terrible strength leaked from the fist rebounded fiercely and blew the red phosphorus back a few steps. Fuck off. Cough. You shouldn't have come in if you knew it. It's useless to say much now. If we want to blame ourselves, we can only blame ourselves. We underestimated Muhan's strength and thought that with the joint efforts of the two of us, we should be able to hold him down temporarily. Now we want to come, but it seems ridiculous. Hearing red phosphorus's words of resentment, Jiu Li sighed bitterly in a low voice. Looking at Xiao Yang's eyes outside the barrier, he became more and more heavy. Red phosphorus also looked through the barrier and stared at Muhan. His eyes were sharply cold and his meaning was ferocious. If the rock owl has something to do, when he goes out, he must pull back Ju Tai's old bald head anyway. I wish I wouldn't go to him. In this case, even Jiu Li Kai Phosphorus, who is quite confident in Xiao Yang, can't help worrying about Xiao Yangsheng. After all, what Xiao Yang is facing now is Muhan. However, compared with the concerns of Jiu Li, Xiao Yang, who is facing the soul seal of the town at the moment, seems very calm, as if the dangerous huge gold seal has nothing to do with him. Seeing the huge gold seal in front of him getting closer and closer, Xiao Yang can more and more clearly detect the terrible breath contained in it. Although his face is distorted and can't see his expression, he still shows a dignified look in Xiao Yang's heart. If he is really hit by this thing, even he is not sure that he can survive. However, Xiao Yang doesn't intend to retreat. He is waiting for an opportunity. Although it seems like some adventure, Xiao Yang still can't help trying, because once he succeeds, his overall strength is bound to soar. Hey, you are really brave. At this time, you still want to borrow his hand to improve your strength. You really regard Muhan as an ordinary half-emperor? For Xiao Yang's mind, Jiu guessed right, and even half-jokingly reminded Xiao Yang. After hearing Jiu's reminder, Xiao Yang was awe-inspiring, but he still couldn't help trying. He was confident that as long as he could succeed this time, even in the face of the 9-star and half-emperor, he wouldn't be powerless to fight back. I still want to try, as long as I can succeed. As long as you can succeed, in the future, you will really have the power to protect yourself in the face of the 9-star and half-emperor. On the contrary, you will disappear in an instant. You must try when you think about it. Jiu's words with a slight reprimand came out again at the bottom of Xiao Yang's heart, but Xiao Yang was silent. The heart pondered for a moment. When the golden seal was coming, Xiao Yangmeng raised his head and suddenly flashed a strange dark awe in his dark eyes. Then his mind moved. A mysterious and strange dark light suddenly appeared in the void space around Xiao Yang's body. Under the difficult control of Xiao Yang, he quickly gathered towards Xiao Yang's body. The dark mysterious light points quickly gathered and condensed a thin layer of black yarn on the surface of Xiao Yang's body. The black yarn seems weak. It seems that it will be damaged as long as the wind blows. However, in the face of the vigorous wind in front of us, the black yarn can't help but surprise people. The strange black gauze was draped over Xiao Yang, but the terror pressure attached to the soul seal still made him a little out of breath. Xiao Yang tried his best to relax his body, remove all his defenses, and carefully experienced the deep fear that the pressure brought to him. It is said that people's real potential can really erupt only when they are in danger. Today, Xiao Yang wants to try again and experience the feeling of approaching death with the strength of half-emperor. The void avenue is produced in the endless void. The black gauze on Xiao Yang's body at the moment is condensed by the power of the void avenue. In the past few years, Xiao Yang became familiar with his control over the power of his own avenue. This avenue gauze garment was the result of his efforts. However, since Tianjueba has improved, Xiao Yang has no time to trick the avenue gauze garment. Therefore, Xiao Yang doesn't know much about the real purpose of this thing. The only thing he can know is, it seems that this thing can completely absorb his breath. As long as he doesn't want to, no one can find out Xiao Yang's real strength. Of course, it doesn't seem to be useful for the current battle. However, Xiao Yang at the moment doesn't take the avenue gauze to hide his breath, but takes the avenue gauze as a guide to condense the power of the avenue this week. This video will end here.